Well, today's story is, I wouldn't call it unusual, but what I will say about it is don't try this at home. Don't try it at anyone's home. Just don't try it ever. Don't do this. Escaping military justice, the inadvisable way. These are true tales of my African adventures. May this inspire you, deter you, caution you, and above all, entertain you. Like all the young men of the day, I was conscripted. I had chosen the Air Force Gymnasium and I was accepted. In the year of my intake, 1 year of military service was compulsory. During that period, you were state property, and they did not look after their property very well as a rule. The South African fighting machine was, however, an efficient one, largely due to the nature of its people, good soldier stock. Rommel was reported to have said, "Give me 500 South Africans and I will conquer the world." Incidentally, one of my relatives surrendered the South African forces to Rommel, and my father happened to be fighting as one of his soldiers. Our basic training was tough, but some of us were tougher than the training. After a full day of physical training, drilling, shooting practice, lectures, etc., 5 a.m. to 5 p.m., I took a dedicated group of souls for additional training from after supper to 10 p.m. at night. We were fit as Spartans, could run any distance asked of us, and just laugh it off in the heat of the summer sun. I was talkative, perhaps too much, as I was chosen to represent my squadron in debating. Yes, we had a debating society in the military, and in my squadron, I was it. A great debating competition was in the offing, and my officer in command gave me my subject, culture. As it turned out, the competition was not really a debating competition, but a one-man dialogue intended to convince the audience and judges of the merits of your subject. According to one's ability, points were awarded, and naturally the highest point scorer won. At 19 years of age in the military, the topic culture somehow did not fit well, considering the raw environment we found ourselves in. In order that I may practice in a proper environment, our OC commanded most of the members of the squadron to sit in a huge hangar so that I could practice on them. Culture, young troops, South Africa, 1973, you might as well have asked me to present a lecture on 12 ways to knit a garment or pattern making for the femininely inclined. The troops viewed my practicing on them as a violation of their human rights, and I received threats from them, many threats from them, more than one who had ratted on a mafia family. At the outset, I sought help from my brother-in-law Klaus. He and my sister Leslie had done a fine job providing me with material that formed almost the entire content of my debate. They were both more than capable of such a task, as they were given to studies of a higher nature. I was grateful. On the night of the competition, attended by all the military brass, troops and families, it was a grand evening. I came second, although I apparently scored the highest marks of the competition at the trials. The end of our basic training was near. I was to receive my stripes as a full corporal, not a noble rank, but at least a reasonable achievement for one in national service. There were 2 weeks to go before our passing out parade. Passing out parade is roughly equivalent to graduation day at university. We were granted a weekend pass, the last one before this, our moment of glory. The weekend began on Friday, 1700, and ended at 23:59 on Sunday, the bewitching hour. The consequences of returning late or not at all were dire. Detention barracks, a deeply unpleasant military prison, losing your rank or pending rank, and having a miserable rest of your military service, dishonor, and all the usual bad stuff. The weekend arrived and we were off. Allowing troops out on a weekend after so much time in concentrated training was like releasing a testosterone-charged stallion into the field of life. Anything could happen, and it usually did. 4 or 5 of us had planned an outing into the bush. This was to be a weekend to end all weekends. Total free rein, food, booze, music. I don't know what happened to the women. And freedom. We partied, bride, slept, and revelled. All good things come to pass, however, and Sunday morning arrived, except for one oversight, a very small oversight. It was Monday morning. How do you lose one entire day when there are only 2 in a weekend? My dilemma was substantial. I would lose my stripes, be charged, and spend time in detention barracks, a fate to be avoided, and disappoint my family, especially my father, who was somewhat proud of my moderate achievements. The pendulum had swung from the highs of revelry to its somber opposite. I was mortified. Find a way out became my mantra. Find a way out. There had to be a legitimate excuse I could present. The military, however, had heard it all. Every excuse in the known world and more. No glib talk in this place. It had to be a real excuse. I hated my plan. What could be more real than a snakebite? I thought. Clearly such an occurrence could only be an accident. Why else would anyone get bitten by a snake? Well, to work. Now, I could not allow myself to get bitten by one of our elapids, which are the cobras and mambas, black mambas, green mambas, Egyptian cobras, or a puff adder, or a gaboon viper. These are very, very, very deadly snakes. Might as well throw myself under a bus. I had limited choices. In our collection, I had a large mole viper and 2 night adders. Neither of these snakes is known to cause death by envenomation, although I believe there has been a death caused by each one of these species. I don't know if it's official. The symptoms, however, are alarming. I ruled out the mole viper as the visual symptoms of a bite from the snake may not be convincing enough. Incidentally, I had been bitten by a mole viper before by real accident. Its bite is considered to be one of the most painful of all snake bites, and is considered to be the most painful snake bite in Africa. Well, I can tell you, it was painful. So a night adder it would be. My brother Charles had been bitten by a large night adder a few years before and was hospitalized. His arm had swollen dramatically. His fingers had swollen to the extent that they could hardly fit on his hand, and his hand was blown up out of all proportion. There was discoloration to boot. Perfect, I thought. Reflecting on my brother's symptoms, I thought they were a little extreme. I should try to tone down the envenomation. There were 2 night adders, a smallish one of around 20 centimeters and a massive one, for a night adder that is, of about 60 centimeters. I would start with the smaller one. I had the presence of mind to place some ice on my wrist for a few minutes to act as a local anesthetic. I removed the snake and assisted it to bite me deeply and effectively. Ouch. I placed the snake in its enclosure, sat back, and waited. Was there pain? Yes. Swelling? Yes. But after an hour, I was unconvinced. Not dramatic enough, I thought. At that point, I should have taken my chances with the military. As I mentioned elsewhere, wisdom eluded me in my youth. Now it was the turn of the big night adder. Ever mindful of my brother's utter despair and violent symptoms after his bite, I concocted a plan. I taped a strip of cardboard 1 by 2 centimeters to the bite site and again applied ice to my already swollen wrist. I retrieved the big snake. I took him behind the head, steadied, aimed, and pressed his mouth down on my wrist. Half on the cardboard, half on my flesh. The night adder, however, had not read the script and lurched forward, burying both fangs above my ice anesthetic and cardboard protection strip. My plan was elevated to a level beyond my intentions. I boxed the snake, sat back, and stared at my throbbing wrist. Did it swell? Most certainly it swelled. Was it painful? Boy, oh boy, was it painful. This was my cue to pack up and go. I had prepared a sling and managed to wear it in an untidy and disheveled way that no self-respecting nurse would ever accept. On arrival at the base, I put on my best "I have been attacked by a snake" face, and within minutes, medics were rushing me to the military hospital. I spent a painful, swollen, miserable 4 days in hospital. I was awarded my stripes. My family attended the ceremony. They never knew what had taken place, and I never told them. It was worth it to see my parents watching me on the parade ground.